Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Jones, and you are listening to the Exploring Death podcast. Hello and welcome to the Exploring Death podcast. I'm Lisa Jones, and today I have with me Jake Samoyedny. He's born a medium and has trained with many of the best mediums alive today, having studied extensively at the Arthur Finley College in Stansted, England. He is a proud registered Lilydale medium and a preferred provider for helping parents heal. Jake is the author of 3 books on mediumship and spirituality: The Compassionate Medium, A Pathway to Eternity, and his newest book, Gatekeeper of the Invisible Door. They are available on Amazon and Kindle. Welcome, Jake.
Hi, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to be interviewing you. I know you're good friends with my friend Irene, who started the Helping Parents Heal group in South Carolina, and I actually spoke to them. And I'm curious how you got to know Irene.
Well, I actually did a phone reading for her after her daughter Carly had passed, and she invited me down. I was traveling down to Florida that year, and she invited me to stay at her house for a couple of days. And it was quite a surprise to her husband and her father, who was staying with, her father was there with her at the time, and to have this strange man staying in the house. Oh, by the way, he's a medium. So,
well, that does raise the question about, what people think of mediums. And you said you were born a medium. So how did you know that you were born one? And tell me a little bit about your childhood.
well, I was that kid who, if the phone rang, I'll tell you who's calling. I'll tell you why they're calling. Because I grew up urban, I would walk up to a bank of elevators and just walk over to the door that's about to open. If the radio came on, I'll tell you the next 3 songs. All psychic. I had no idea how I knew it or why, but it was just right there. And like everyone else, I suppressed it for a long time because you don't want to be too different growing up. It's hard enough. And then to be that odd kid is really even more difficult. But it did get me out of a lot of trouble at times, and I ran with a tough group, and there were times I'd say, "I'm not getting in that car tonight. I'm gonna stay here on the corner." And
wow.
Something would usually happen, and I would sort of escape that problem. But so I learned to trust it as time went on. But I was like everybody else. I was busy growing a family and businesses and things like that. And, and then all of a sudden it became what it is. And it sort of exploded very quickly at a certain point.
Wow. Can you tell us about that point that it really exploded?
Well, I had a long-term relationship with this woman, and I got very close to her son Jeremiah. And about 5 years into the relationship, Jerry had become, what's the right words for this? He had struggled with his own issues and started drinking heavily and sort of fell in love with the wrong person. All these things were happening. Everything was stacked up against him. And at a certain point, he chose to leave this world. And in doing so, his mother and I weren't really together at that point, but the family asked me to come back and help take care of her while she was going through the grieving process. And about 5 weeks after he had passed, it was a really cold winter's day. It was too early for dinner, and it was not quite too late for a nap. So I decided to curl up and grab a nap that afternoon. And as soon as I got into bed, my eyes were still wide open. All of a sudden, I was not in my bedroom anymore, and I was in a scene with Jerry, who had passed away 5 weeks earlier. And when I looked at him, and he was about 100 yards away from me, he was on this pebbled path, and there was a horse fence behind him and a beautiful meadow beyond. And when I looked at him, all of a sudden his face came right up to me. He was about 3 feet away, and his face was quite beautiful, far more beautiful than when I had last seen him in the physical world. His complexion was creamy. He looked full. His face was about twice the size as normal. And he said to me, "It's good. I'm good." And then immediately he was back on the path. And now I was caught up, and it's like, how did he do that? I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. And when I looked at the horse fence, I could see the grain of wood on the part facing me, but then I could see the grain of wood on the other side and the grain of the wood underneath. And I was trying to figure out, how did I do that? Because I didn't move. So at that point, I just said to myself, because I thought it was funny, I said, you're having a psychotic break. And then I said, go with it. And I just went with it, and I started to look at the grass, and I could see both sides of the blades of grass and the different shades. I knew they were green, but they weren't any green I had seen before. I knew the brown in the horse fence was different than any brown I had experienced, but I knew it was a brown. And when Jerry started to walk again, and he stopped, and I was behind him, and he turned around to look at me. And when he did, his face came up to me, and he said, I want one piece of the 7-layer cake from the White Plains Bakery, just one piece. And I was like, okay. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And he was back on the path, and he started to walk off, and then it just dissolved, and I was back in my room. And I was just blown away. And it took me till the next morning to get a hold of his mother. And I went over and I started to tell her what I experienced. And, you know, I talked about the colors. I talked about how beautiful his face looked, how he said he was good, it's good, the way things moved, and I couldn't understand. It was almost like if I had to create something, I would say it was 4-dimensional versus 3-dimensional, because you're able to move within it. And her affect was very even and not really emotional. And at one point she said to me, you might be a medium. And I was like, okay. The only medium I'd ever heard of, even slightly at that point, was, I think, John Edwards. You know, I didn't even know of Van Prague at that point or any of the others. And so then they said, oh, and the last thing he said to me before he left was, I want one piece of the 7-layer cake from the White Plains Bakery, just one piece. With that, she lost it. And she was on the floor in that guttural cry that a mother has after losing a child. And it took about 10 minutes to calm her down, where she got back and sat on the couch again and said to me that the week before, at the end of the week before, she had driven down to Philly to look at a doctoral program at UPenn. And when she was driving home from there, and I knew she was going to go at some point to look at that program. I didn't know it was then. We weren't in, you know, we weren't in that kind of day-to-day contact. And while she was driving home from there, she was talking to her son. This is about 200 miles from home, about 5 days earlier. And she started to talk to him, saying that she would love to get that 7-layer cake that we love, but I don't know if the bakery will be open by the time I get back. I wonder if they'll sell me one piece, because I don't want to buy the whole cake because I'll eat the whole cake. I just want one piece of that 7-layer cake from the White Plains Bakery. So in that was her validation that her son existed somewhere. We didn't know where. We just had the idea that he was still alive somewhere, because he caught her conversation and then somehow got it to me so I could relay it back to her. So that was really the first time it opened up in that way, to that degree. That was mind-blowing for me. So.
Right. Oh my gosh. I had chills the whole time you were talking. And what really got to me, because I say the exact same words, when I left my body the night my husband died, I went to heaven, quote unquote, and saw the welcome home party for him. They were gathering together, and an announcement, you know, that he was about to arrive. And the colors that I saw, I always say to people, I saw colors that I've never seen before. I mean, they were like you said, there was a green, but it's not the same green that we have here. I mean, it's just this vibrant, beautiful, like it's love. It's exuding just love, and I don't know what. There's no words.
And it was for me on a personal level, it became really interesting, because from that day forward, if I was in the shower, I would get there was something about putting your head in a certain position in the water, and it was like somebody dumping a bucket of information into my head every time I climbed into the shower. And I got to the point where I was like, all right, I can't keep doing it this way. I got to learn how to work with this in a different way, because this is just bizarre.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, things would come through. I started to study with, I was very, very fortunate. I didn't find the best teacher initially, It took me about 6 months to find a really good teacher. And I was very fortunate to connect. I lived within a half an hour or so of Janet Nohavic's Journey Within Church in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. And for me, she's probably the standard bearer for mediumship in the United States, at least for gallery style. I don't think anybody can touch her with the level of evidence that she pulls, and the whole manner in which she works just blows me away. And it's all based in integrity. She's a former Catholic nun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's very much about integrity and very strong on evidence. Very much in the British style of no evidence, no message, rather than the American style, all message, very little evidence. It's just sort of backwards version of it. But for me, it's all is good. I don't knock any style of mediumship, because for myself, what I've done is I've sort of gone cafeteria style, and I've studied with a lot of different I probably have had 35, 40 teachers at this point, and I take what makes sense from each one, and I leave the parts that don't. So sort of cafeteria style, and I've developed my own version of it that seems to work for me. So,
I like that. I like it a lot, because I think you're right. I think, some people, you don't need to give them a lot of evidence. Just knowing these words are coming through, and they can almost feel the energy and all of that. But other people, definitely want the evidence. So I think that's great that you've developed your own way. So tell me, so you went to the Arthur Finley School. I've heard so many different things about the school, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it.
It's an incredible building. It's the real story of it is, it was started by Arthur Finley, and he donated it to become this college for mediums, and in 1964, and ever since then, that's what it's been, a school for mediums. And it's had a shoestring budget, and then there's other times it's done really well, and it goes back and forth. And the building itself is what, if you're familiar with the Harry Potter series, when J.K. Rowling was writing that, she based Hogwarts on Arthur Finley College.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I thought it was Trinity College in Ireland, because they've got an amazing library there, but gosh, yeah. Amazing.
Well, I think the train ride that she would take when she was writing goes through Stansted-Montfichet, which is the town where Arthur Finley College is.
Right.
It doesn't look like Hogwarts, but I think it was the idea of, in this place it's all mediums, and in that place it's all wizards. So
yeah.
But it's an amazing school. You get to work with mediums from all over the world. You get to see a lot of different styles, different levels of comfort in their mediumship. It's a bizarre building. There's a lot of energy there you can't quite explain. I took a trance class there about maybe 7 years ago, I forget now, with Eileen Davies, a Scottish medium. And I had slipped into trance without realizing it. And I was working with this beautiful statuesque woman from Sweden who was about 6'1", 6'2", gorgeous lady in her 70s. And I had slipped into trance without realizing, and I was just talking to her, and Eileen, the teacher, came over and said, "Jake, realize that your sitter is crying, but it's a good cry. And, you're about 70-30 at this point. You're about 70 in trance, about 30 you. I'm going to talk you out of it. I'm going to bring you back into the room." So she did. And my sitter looked at me and said, I fall to love with you with the words you speak to me. It was so cool. But here's the really cool part of the story is they always break for tea at all different times during the day there. It's very British. So instead of going to tea, I went up to my room and I sat on the bed, and I'm not really naturally drawn towards trance. I don't know why, but it just doesn't attract me, even though I seem to be able to do it. And I said, Spirit, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to let me know, because I'm not really drawn to it. I'm not something I'm running to. And my little tablet was sitting on a chair, and it just floated off the chair and landed on the floor. I mean, just literally floated. I was like, okay, I'll take that as a sign. So I'm like, all right.
Oh my goodness. So do you do trance medium now or not?
No, I haven't.
You still didn't do it.
Still not drawn to it. I'm still,
yeah.
I understand it. I see why people do it. I understand the intelligence of it. I just don't know what to do with it or how to incorporate it into my life at this point. I'm pretty busy with readings. I basically do one thing. I don't have, I have all the modalities. I've studied them all from one end to the other, and I can teach them and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not drawn towards that either. So I basically do one-on-one readings. That's what I do.
Right. Right.
And I probably do maybe on average each year, it's always between 600 and 800 readings a year. So I do about 700 a year.
Oh my goodness. So how many a day is that?
It can be, I've cut back now. The max I'll do now is 6 a day. That's the most I'll do now.
That's a lot.
Yeah, like 7, 8 years ago, I was doing 10. I could do 8 to 10 a day, very comfortably.
Oh
But I
my
realized
goodness.
that, I'm 64, so I can't, you're going to run out of steam at some point.
Right,
So.
right. And are these generally hour longs or what's your,
Well, technically, they're supposed to be 30 minutes. I have yet to do a 30-minute reading.
right.
I just keep going. And I tell people I book on the hour on purpose. I need those few minutes in between.
Right.
Or I just keep, a lot of times at the end, you have to put the person back together. You can't open it up. You can't hit the, say time's up, bye, and then just.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got.
Wow, that's amazing. So the other thing you mentioned in the bio was the Lilydale. And so tell the listeners about Lilydale. I know it was in the Northeast because it was near where I lived in Connecticut, but I never got there.
It's about a 7-hour ride from where you live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's on the other side of the state. It's about an hour south of Buffalo, right on the Lake Erie. It's about a mile in from Lake Erie. It's America's oldest spiritualist community. It's been there since 1879, I believe. I think it just had its 140 or 141st season there. It was started as a place by what they called the free thinkers back then, because if Susan B. Anthony or if Elizabeth Cady Stanton spoke, they would get arrested if they spoke in public. But Lilydale is considered religious grounds, so they would come there to speak and crowds would gather, and that's where the suffragette movement helped to grow and to prosper into what it became later on. So it's really always been dominated by females from the beginning, and it still is. There's on an average, if I wanted to make up a number, I'd say there's 50 mediums there a year that are registered, and at least 42 of them are females.
Oh, wow.
There's only maybe 8 or 9, male mediums there, so it's dominated by females still. And it's just an interesting place. It has a little bit of tourism going on there where it's a point of interest. People do come there. It's a destination. It's not far. It's only about a 20-25 minute ride to Chautauqua Institution. So we do get a lot of crossover from there. At least I do. I get a lot of people who come from Chautauqua. They come over for the day to get readings and things like that.
And what's going on at Chautauqua? I'm not familiar with Chautauqua.
Chautauqua is it's a Victorian town that has a season, and the homes are gorgeous. It's incredibly upscale. They have this beautiful amphitheater that seats maybe 5,000 or 6,000, and they have people like Diana Ross will come, the Beach Boys, Frankie Valli each year. I've gone to a few of the shows there, and it is gorgeous. The way the sound is perfect. However they built this thing, it's perfect, and it is sort of an interesting place, in that I think it's one of a kind. So it's really, there's a lot of, you'll hear a lot of shakers and movers, anyone from Deepak Chopra to John Shelby Spong was there a lot. And these were all people speaking on religion, on spirituality, and it has a lot of that bent to it. But it's literally right on Lake Chautauqua, so it's quite beautiful, and it's a very large, natural lake.
Wow.
So, but it's like as if Ridgefield, Connecticut had it all in one area.
Right,
sort of like
right. Very cool.
Less spread out and more concentrated.
That's right. I love it. Well, I just want to circle back. So you said when this exploded, you were a businessman and, building your life and doing all that. And then, so once this happened, did you quit your job? Or, I mean, what led you to now doing 700 readings a year?
Well, I'm very fortunate because I believe about only 1% can actually make a living doing this. So I'm very fortunate. I'm in that 1 percentile. I just worked harder than everybody else I knew. I mean, jokingly, jokingly on helping parents heal. one of the board members refers to me as the hardest working medium in America because I'm always doing readings. So I just, even as when I was in classes and stuff, I was always doing extra readings outside. I didn't just do what we were doing in the classroom. What I did was I walked into a store in the town I lived in, and I told the woman in the store, I said, Jackie, I want to give you a reading, but here's the deal. I'm not going to charge you. I need it for practice. But the deal is you then have to pass my number on to one of your friends that I don't know, and I'll do a reading for them, but then they have to pass me on. And I was doing 8 or 10 readings a week like that to get more experience. The names started coming very quickly. I was building all the different tools in my toolbox, and they kept adding tools into my toolbox. So what each year that I go to Lilydale, because I know I'm going to do a concentration of readings there in a short period of time, in say 3.5 months, I'll do 400 readings. So I go in with the intention of working on something, and for the last 3 years, I've been working on numbers. So I'm looking to, and last year I started to pull out people's bank pins. So,
oh my goodness.
So what I'm hoping for in the next couple of years is to get to where I can get somebody's full phone number that's in spirit.
Right. So that's talk about evidence.
Well, here's my long-term goal. I have one even bigger than that. Before I die, I'm hoping to get somebody in spirit's social security number so that there's no way you cannot get it from another human, because we don't know each other's social security number. You cannot get it psychically. You cannot look it up. You know what I mean? There's no way to get it. To me, that's the ultimate validation. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but that's what my long-range goal is.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Well, by the way, part of what I do on my show is I pull 3 cards for the people I interview. Are you ready for that?
I'm up for it. Let's go.
Okay, let's see.
I never get readings, by the way.
I know. Well, that's what's so fun is when I work or when I speak with mediums, they're always like, "Oh, I never get to receive." Yeah. So we'll see what comes up. And oh my gosh, this is about your finding the social security number, because the first card is the blockage card, which is communication. Mm-hmm. And so of course that's where we're blocked, right? It's hard to communicate with the other side. And so people are skeptical until you get that validating information. So embracing is the action. So just keep holding that thought, keep knowing that it's going to happen. And then, oh my gosh, the outcome card is fulfillment.
I love it.
So just keep holding to that idea. And I think you're going to be not only known as the hardest working medium, but also the most accurate and, most, that would be phenomenal, getting those numbers. I remember I was on stage at, I think it was the first time I was invited to be on stage, and I brought up a woman who lost her daughter, and I put my hands on her shoulders, and I just said, all I see is a big number 4. And she just burst into tears. And she said that was her number on her soccer jersey, and it was just so clear to me that it was one of those 4s that looked like, I wasn't able to say soccer jersey, but I was so happy to get that number, Yeah. But that was pretty easy, one number as opposed to a whole social security.
I was doing in Lilydale, they have Monday night circles where you sit with 5 people normally, and you give each person a mini reading of say 10 minutes or so. And I was working with 4 younger people, and they stuck this 5th person in after I had started, and she was a real message hog. She wanted every message. No, that's not for her. That's mine. That's mine. That's my grandmother. She was claiming everything. And I was working with this young girl to my left, and I said, this is your grandmother. Her name is Anna. This is what she looked like. I gave her enough so she knew it was a grandmother. She's like, no, that's my grandmother. That's my grandmother's name. I'm like, no, I know I'm working with her. I'm with her. Stop. I know I'm here. So she wasn't stopping. So in my head, I said to Spirit, you have to give me something so that 1, this kid knows for a fact I have a grandmother, and 2, I can shut this other one up so I could finish my readings. So I saw the number 601 in my head. And I said to the younger, I said, you're not going to know this. I said, but your grandmother used to play the numbers, and not at the lottery store, but with bookies back in the day. I said, and this was something she did. You're going to have to check it. She goes, I don't even know what that means. I said, I know. So I'm saying you're going to have to check with your parents, but this is something she did on a regular basis. I said, and the number she played was 601. And when I said that to her, she burst into tears. She goes, "That's the address of my grandmother's house."
Oh,
I said, "That's why she played it. That's why it was her number." And then I looked at the other one. I said, "Do you understand now? This was for her." You know? And after that, she was fine. But it was like, oh my God, it was like she kept pulling everything. She wanted it all. So definitely a message hug.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I've had that experience too. And when people, I'm saying I'm getting like a couple, they were killed in a car accident together. And then everyone, like 6 or 10 people were raising their hand. I'm like, there is no possible way.
I know.
You know, and then I pick on them and they're like, well, that's not what happened to them, but I want you to bring through my mom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just, because I was new. I had no idea what I was doing. So anyway,
I made up a little routine where if people are too stiff, I do this little conversation about, I bring through a Siamese twins, and then I said, oh, they were joined at the hip. Oh no, I'm sorry, yours are joined at the neck. Oh, sorry, wrong Siamese twins. I must have somebody, you know, because what are the odds? What are the odds you could have two in one audience? So
yeah, no kidding. That's hilarious. Well, let's. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your book before we go. So if you want to hold that up for our viewers on YouTube, and for those of you that are listening, you'll just have to check it out. Gatekeeper of the Invisible Door.
And the foreword is by Irene of Helping Parents Heal. And actually, from my mind, the best written piece in there is her foreword.
Yeah, our mutual friend, which is how this whole conversation started. So fantastic.
Well, I really genuinely struggled with putting this book out. I had a hard time. I wrote it, I finished it about 1.5 years ago, and then I sat on it for a year because I couldn't let it out. I was having such problems with the idea of me being worthy enough to tell these parents' story of their children, the most important, thing in their lives, and then this event that changes their lives forever. And Irene kept pushing me, saying there's tremendous value in the accumulation of validations that are told in these stories. That's why people seem to like this book. And I'll be honest with you, it's selling really well on Amazon. It's outsold the other books already pretty well. So we'll see how that continues. But I'm working on a novel. I can't talk about that yet. I've never written one before. So I'm about 1/3 of the way through a novel. Because I wanted to try it and see if I could do it.
Fantastic. Well, you'll have to keep us posted when you're publishing that one. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, great. So go ahead.
I said that's probably about 1 year away before that'll be finished, or even close to being finished. So I write mostly during the winter, because during the Lilydale season, you don't really there's not much downtime.
Right. Yeah, doing that many readings a day. Well, wonderful. Well, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to connect?
Well, my website is compassionatemedium.com. I actually own that. I had a friend who was an attorney who kept hearing about my readings. And so he went out and figured out how to lock that up for me. So I'm technically the compassionate medium. And compassionatemedium.com is the website. They can email me at jake@compassionatemedium.com. My phone number, which I'm accessible, is 914-227-5398. That's the easiest way, is either calling or just emailing. Most of the requests for readings come in through emails.
Wonderful.
Or text even now. The younger the clients get, the more text you get looking for readings, which is really cool.
That's right. Well, wonderful. Well, this was awesome, Jake. Thank you so much for your time.
You're a total sweetie pie. I'm happy to work with you anytime. If any way I can help you in the future, please reach out, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Death podcast. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any financial or legal decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Exploring Death. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.